Good morning, girls and boys. So, today we start with part 2 of the poem Abhisara The Tryst. So, before we begin part 2, let's quickly recap what we studied in part 1. In the opening of the poem, we are introduced to Upagupta, a disciple of Buddha, who is sleeping peacefully on the dusty ground near the city wall of Mathura. On a dark August night, he is awakened by Vasavdutta, a famous dancing girl known for her beauty, youth, and charm. Impressed by Upagupta's calm and spiritually beautiful face, Vasavdutta invites him to her house. However, Upagupta politely declines her invitation and tells her, "When the time is ripe, I will come to you." At this point, we do not know what he means by the right time, but these words create suspense and prepare us for an important event later in the poem. Now, let's continue with part 2 and see what happens next. Suddenly, the black night showed its teeth in a flash of lightning. Suddenly, meaning it happens unexpectedly and creates shock, adds drama, breaks calmness of the scene. The black night, the black night means the night is described as completely dark. The black night emphasizes darkness, mystery, and uncertainty. Showed its teeth. This is not literal. The night is imagined like a dangerous animal showing its teeth. Literally device used here is personification plus metaphor. In a flash of lightning, which means a sudden bright flash of lightning appears in the sky. So what is personification? Personification is a literary device in which human qualities are given to animals, objects, or things in nature. Simply put, when a non-living thing or an animal is described as acting like a human being, it is called personification. Now, to give you an example from the poem itself, the storm growled from the corner of the sky. Now, we all know that a storm cannot actually growl, only animals and humans can. So, the poet gives storm a human or an animal like quality. Now, what is metaphor? So, metaphor is an indirect comparison in which one thing is said to be another thing. So, when where metaphors are used, words like or as are not used. So, I'll give you an example. The classroom was a zoo. So now the class is actually not a zoo, but it is compared to one. Why? Because the classroom is noisy and chaotic. Okay. So now to summarize this line, uh, suddenly there was a flash of lightning in the dark night, making the night sky look frightening and dramatic. Literary devices used here are personification, imagery, and symbolism. Now, an exam ready interpretation would be: the poet uses vivid personification to describe the stormy night as a living force that suddenly becomes fierce with a flash of lightning. This enhances the dramatic atmosphere and reflects the emotional intensity of the moment. The storm growled from the corner of the sky, and the woman trembled in fear. Okay. Now, the storm growled, meaning the storm makes a deep rumbling sound, just like an animal growling. Again, the literary device used here is personification to make the storm feel alive and dangerous and to create fear and tension. From the corner of the sky, meaning the storm seems to come from a distant part of the sky. It gives a visual direction to the storm and makes the sky feel vast and threatening. And the woman trembled in fear, meaning Vasavadatta becomes scared and starts shaking. Even though she is a confident and beautiful dancer, she is now vulnerable. This shows human helplessness before nature and emotional contrast in her character. So, what is this contrast? Earlier, she is shown as being confident, and now in the current moment, she is shown as vulnerable. So, a simple meaning would be a storm was forming in the sky, making a loud rumbling sound like growling. The woman became frightened and started trembling. Now, to conclude, the poet uses personification to describe the storm as a fierce force of nature that growls from the sky. This creates a sense of drama and fear, while the woman's trembling highlights human vulnerability in contrast to nature's power. A year had not yet passed. A year. A year here is important. Why? Because it suggests a significant passage of time and change in circumstance. Had not yet passed, meaning the year was still incomplete. It shows waiting or continuation of time and creates expectation that something important will happen soon. So, to summarize it simply, only a short time had gone by, less than a year since the earlier meeting. Time has moved forward, but the story is not yet complete. The poet is telling us that after the earlier meeting between Upagupta and Vasavadatta, less than a year has passed, and the situation is about to change dramatically. So, literary importance is shown through time progression, foreshadowing context, and structural transition. So, what is the structural transition like? So this line, "a year had not yet passed," is it. This line acts like a bridge between the first encounter and the later suffering scene. So, to conclude, the poet uses a simple statement of time to indicate the passage of less than a year, marking a transition in the narrative. This prepares the reader for the change in circumstances that will unfold in the poem. It was evening of a day in April in the spring. The branches of the wayside trees were full of blossom. It was evening, the time is evening, of a day in April, the month is April. In the spring, the season is spring. Now, here an important contrast. Ironically, this beautiful season comes just before we see Vasavadatta in suffering. Tagore deliberately creates this contrast. The branches of the wayside, meaning beside the road, trees, the trees standing along the roadside, were full of blossom, which means the trees were covered with flowers. So, to summarize it simply, it was a spring evening in the month of April. The trees growing beside the road were covered with flowers. Literary devices used here are visual imagery, symbolism. So, what is symbolism? Symbolism when something stands for or represents a bigger idea than its literary meaning. It is called symbolism. To give you an example, rose. Now, literal meaning is a flower. Symbolic meaning is love. So, rose is a symbol of love. So if you see, there is a deeper meaning to it. So just like blossoms fade, the physical beauty also fades. This connects directly to Vasavadatta's fate later. An exam ready interpretation would be: the poet creates a peaceful and beautiful spring setting through vivid imagery of blossoming trees and an April evening. The blossoming flowers symbolize youth and beauty while also hinting at their temporary nature. So, what is the temporary nature? Anything that is physical, with primarily the beauty, the physical beauty, it fades with time. Gay notes of a flute came floating in the warm spring air from afar. Gay notes. The word gay here is used in its older literary sense, meaning cheerful, joyful, lively. The music sounds happy and carefree. Of a flute. The sound is coming from a flute. Flute music is often associated with celebration and joy. Came floating. The sound travels gently through the air. Literary effect is: the music seems soft, smooth, and natural. Literary device used here is auditory imagery. In the warm spring air, the atmosphere is pleasant and comfortable because it is spring. From afar, the music is coming from a distant place. So, simple meaning would be: happy and cheerful flute music could be heard softly from far away in the pleasant spring air. Literary devices used here are auditory imagery, sensory imagery, meaning sound, and touch and feel. So, sound through flute notes, touch and feeling through warm spring air. Symbolism: a deeper meaning here would also be: this joyful atmosphere is deliberately creating is deliberate this joyful atmosphere of spring, of the flute, of the music coming out of a flute is so this creates a joyful atmosphere, and this atmosphere is deliberately created before the tragic revelation of Vasavadatta later. Tagore uses this contrast to show happiness and beauty in life are temporary. An exam ready interpretation would be: the poet uses auditory imagery to create a cheerful and peaceful spring atmosphere through the flute music floating from a distance. The joyful mood also symbolizes the temporary pleasures and beauty of worldly life. The citizens had gone to the woods for the festival of flowers. The citizens, meaning the people living in the city, had gone to the woods. They had left the city and gone into the forest or wooded area. So, what effect is this creating? Uh, that the city is now mostly empty and quiet. This isolation becomes important later because Vasavadatta is left alone outside the city for the festival of flowers, meaning people are celebrating a spring flower festival. Flowers bloom beautifully but fade quickly. This mirrors Vasavadatta's beauty, once admired and later destroyed by illness. A simple meaning would be: the people of the city had gone to the forest to celebrate a flower festival. Literary devices used in this line are symbolism, contrast. Okay, contrast as in the atmosphere is of flower festival, and this is contrasted with the suffering and loneliness that soon appear in the poem. Imagery. Imagery is another literary device used here. Now, Tagore intentionally places celebration beside future suffering. And by doing so, this reminds readers worldly joy and beauty are temporary and uncertain. So, an exam ready interpretation would be the flower festival creates a joyful spring atmosphere, which, while symbolizing the temporary nature of beauty and happiness. The citizen's departure also leaves the city isolated, preparing the setting for the later tragic scene involving Vasavdutta. Okay. So, girls and boys, with this, we will conclude part 2 of the poem, and I will see you in part 3, which would be the final part of the poems, the final part which will carry the explanation for the remaining of the poem. Any suggestion, any feedback, anything that you want me to, like anything, any question or anything that is being taught in the class, and you would want more clarity, or you would want me to elaborate on the approach to a question, please feel free to mention that in the comment section below. Please also understand that these tutorials are being created for your benefit, and these tutorials will add value to your preparation only and only if you come up with your feedback, your suggestion, you asking me, to teach you or to elaborate more on, anything that you are finding it difficult while it is being taught in the class. Please feel free to leave your comments below, and I'll see you in part 3, or the final part, explanation part of the poem. Have a blessed day ahead. Bye bye.